All right, this is Books and Bitcoin, episode 4. Today I'm joined with Tech Engineer. Tech Engineer can be found on Twitter at Tech Engineer 21. We discuss some of the fundamentals of Bitcoin mining and what the average person needs to know to mine at home. We also talked about some of the interesting innovations that Tech has been working on with mining and heat. So, without further ado, off to the show. This is Books and Bitcoin with Dylan Viola. This is episode 4, and I'm talking with Tech. Tech is a home miner who uses Bitcoin mining to double spend energy. Not only does he mine Bitcoin, but he also heats pools or water heaters or however you have it. The energy is not just used for mining, but is also used for heating. Tech, how are you today?
Hey, good, Dylan. How you doing?
Oh, I'm wonderful. So I thought today would be like a Bitcoin mining 101, because I feel like as long as I've been focusing on Bitcoin, I never really learned what mining was. So if you want to just start with like what is Bitcoin mining, that would probably be perfect.
Oh yeah, man. That is a big question that we can go as deep or shallow as we want to, but let's just start with the overview of it, I guess, and then we can go deeper if we want. How about that? So
Perfect.
generally, I mean, mining is the process of adding blocks to the blockchain, and in the process, verifying new transactions in the blocks. It does this in a trustless manner by employing the concepts of proof of work and consensus. As a reward, the miner that successfully solves for the next block is given the block reward plus transaction fees. And so, I mean, that's kind of the 100-foot view of mining, and that's kind of the overview.
Okay,
but we can go deeper into it if you want.
Well, we will, but from the 100-foot view. All right, so if you're mining and you're in a pool, let's just call it slush pool, and you're contributing your hash power, and they're paying you out based on your hash. Are you getting the transaction fee based on your hash, or are you just getting the mining reward based on your hash?
So it's a combination of the mining reward plus the transaction fees for the block. And so if the pool that you are mining to happens to win a particular block, you'll get a percentage of the overall hash power of the pool based on how much hash power you are contributing to the pool.
Okay, yeah, so that seemed fair in my mind, but I wasn't sure if they just kept all the transaction fee and then only gave you like, your hash power percentage. Another question, like simple mining question is, if I were mining at home, could I just buy an S9, an S17 and plug it in? Or do I have to do like really anything particular with my regular wall outlets to make it possible?
So an S9, you definitely can plug into a regular US outlet, a 110 volt outlet, because they are about 1500 watts, and they can run on 110 volts or 220 volt circuits. So they will work on a standard outlet. When you step up anything above an S9, so pretty much any of the newer generation miners, you have to step up to 220 volt circuits. What did you say, an S17?
Yeah, is that not a thing? Like, isn't it like hitting at like 50 something terahashes?
Yeah. I was just making sure. I'm not 100% sure about an S17. I think those are 220 volt as well, but I mean, the S19s are all 220. The Watts miners are all 220 volts. All of basically anything made in the last three years or so are all 220 volt. And really, even running an S9 is optimal to have 220 volt because it gives some efficiency improvements. But you can run an S9 on 110 volt standard US outlet.
Okay, and so let's just say I'm on Kaboom Racks. I see an S19 for sale. I don't know, today's price probably like $4,500 for one of the like 104s. Say I buy it and get it shipped to the house. I can't just plug it in because I need the 220. So what does that require me to do? Do I call an electrician and have them like wire my house differently, or do I just plug it in where like my dryer is or something? Like I don't know. I figure you mine at home, so you know.
Yeah, so you can use any 220 volt outlet. I mean, if you happen to have one, you can. Dryers are 220 volt outlets. I mean, in my case, my dryer is a gas dryer, so I didn't have a 220 volt outlet there. And I also wanted to put one like in my garage and also in my attic. So I had an electrician come install 3 different circuits in a few different locations that I potentially wanted to use. So yeah, it's definitely recommended to get an electrician, come out and install the circuit for you. But yeah, that's what you do.
Okay. And I mean, I don't know, is this too personal? How much, like, when the electrician came out and got your house set up to be able to mine, like, how much did that set you back?
So it depends a lot on the distance from your panel, because the biggest cost is the actual copper cabling, because it's a real thick gauge of wire. It's 10 or 12 gauge copper wire. So I mean, so in my case, I had 3 different circuits, one of them all the way up to my attic. It was a long run. I think I ended up spending, I want to say about 1,500 or 2,000 for those 3 circuits. But I added like one for a future dryer, and so I mean, I did a little bit more. So I mean, a single circuit pretty close to your panel, you could probably spend $300 to $800, just depending.
Okay, that's not bad. That's really not bad at all. So
Yeah.
800, you have your house wired. You can mine at home. Another thing. All right, what's something people complain about? The noise. So
Yeah.
look, be honest with you. I've never mined at home. I've always thought about it. Like I'm in the Kaboom Racks Telegram group. I'm always looking at it, but I've never bought.
Right on.
So people complain about the noise. How do you mitigate that? I seen a video on your Twitter where you had like a box in your attic and it was like venting, it was venting the heat outward. I don't know. Just like run me how that works.
Yeah, so noise mitigation and heat mitigation are going to be 2 of your primary concerns that you want to get figured out before you start mining. Because they're essentially a space heater. I mean, an S9 is 1,500 watts. That's how much a space heater is, and it puts out the equal amount of heat. So think of a space heater running in a room all the time. It's going to heat up a room. So what I ended up doing, because I knew that these things put out a lot of heat, I prepped and got it ready. And what I wanted to do was to actually use the heat to heat my house. And I mean, obviously, you could put a miner in a room and just let it run. It's going to heat up that room. But now you have to deal with the noise problem. So what I did was in my case, I have room in my attic that's just open space. And so I built a box. I built it out of wood and then lined it with metal to make it a little bit more heat and fire resistant. And then I ducted the input and the output into my HVAC primary ducting. So basically, the output of the box went into the input to my main heater ducts. So the idea was that it would essentially preheat the heater or potentially even just heat the whole house on its own. So the box itself provides some noise cancellation. Just having a box around the device with some ducting on the edges, it baffles the sound. And then also being in my attic, there's a lot of insulation. So in my house, you can't even hear the miners because they're above 16 inches of insulation and a box. So overall, my concept was to mitigate the sound and also reuse the heat. And that's one of my focuses is heat reuse of the miners. So I built the box and the ducting, and then I also wanted to thermostatically control the heat output. So I could just dump all the heat into my house, but eventually it's going to get my house too hot. So what you really want to do is have some control mechanism to have it dump into the house when you want heat and then leave the house when you don't want heat. So I created a damper solution and then I hooked it up to my thermostat. So when the thermostat calls for heat, it dumps into my house through my venting. And when it doesn't call for heat, it just dumps it into the attic as waste heat. Now you don't have to get that involved. There are other solutions where you can just have it in an enclosure with proper ventilation just to kind of mitigate the sound and put it somewhere where the heat can dissipate.
Okay. So yeah, I've seen a lot of these, like, I don't know, maybe they're called like Bitcoin black boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have them, outside their home, and they'll duct into the house to pump heat into the house. But I feel like it's more like that's a Minnesota thing. That's a Canada thing. That's not a Texas thing. That's not a Florida thing. That's not, it's 102 degrees outside right now where I am. So we don't really need heat. We really need to get rid of heat.
Mm-hmm.
So you put in the attic and you can vent it outside of the house, and it's really not increasing your electricity bill. You're essentially just mining and pumping out heat. Right? Does that sound fair?
No, I'm still using electricity. If I'm mining, I'm using electricity. So,
Yeah.
I mean, in the summer, I'm not able to use the heat when the house is already hot from the weather.
Okay. And you're like in Vegas or something, right? You're like in a hot area.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And it's not okay, like it's not super uneconomical where you're paying $500 a month for your electricity bill while running like let's call it a S19.
So it just depends on how many miners you have. I mean, so I have one M30S plus right now, which is
one of the newest ones.
It's one of the newer ones. It's it's pretty close to an S19. It's 110 terahash unit. So it's drawing about 3,300 watts.
Okay. Yes. That's probably what, $200 a month right there.
Yeah, it's probably about 300 or so.
Okay.
And that's where it helps to have a time of use power plan, which is what I'm on here in Vegas. And I had done a post about that recently as well. And we can talk about that if you want.
Let's talk about it right now. Let's go into that, because that makes I contacted my energy company the other day, and they messaged me back. They're like, "Sir, we're a co-op. We're a nonprofit co-op. We're not sure what you're talking about." And I was like, "All right, let me get a little smarter before I email back."
Oh, so what did you ask them about? You asked them specifically for a time of use,
I emailed them and I was like, "Look, so I think at my house I pay like 12 cents a kilowatt hour," and I emailed them. I was like, "Look, I'm trying to, mine Bitcoin. I want to, I'm going to use a lot of power." I said, "Is there any plans that you offer that would allow me, to run at different hours or do something to help your demand side to where I'm getting to pay less per cost a kilowatt hour?" And then they just emailed back and said, "Sir, we're a nonprofit co-op. We're not sure what you're talking about." And then I didn't even email back after that.
Really, that's really interesting to hear that, though. It's good feedback at least. But yeah, so I can tell you what I'm doing here in Vegas. Here in Vegas, the highest consumption period of electricity is during the summer between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. when everybody, homes and businesses, are all using air conditioning because it's very hot. So it's average 100 degrees plus every day usually. So to incentivize people to use power outside of those time periods, they have a special opt-in plan. It's a time of use plan where between 1 and 7 p.m. you pay about 4x the electricity rate. So it's like 42 cents a kilowatt hour between 1 and 7 p.m. but it's only during the 4 months of the summer. So June, July, August, September.
Mm-hmm.
And then in return, I get basically half price power the rest of the entire year and any time during the summer except for 1 to 7 p.m. So the regular price is like 11 cents kilowatt hour here. It drops to 6 cents per kilowatt hour all year. So September through May, and then also off in between 7 p.m. all the way to 1 p.m. the next day, it's the lower rate.
Yeah. So, I mean, essentially, the way that sounds in my head is for 25% of the year between 1 and 7, which is 25% of the day. So 25%, 25% of 25%, which is, let's just call it 6%. That would be 24%.
Mm-hmm.
For 6% of the year, you're going to pay 4 times the cost. And for the other 94%, you're getting half cost.
Right.
And you could just run those miners like all out.
Right.
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, that is where it's at. So
yeah,
between 1 and 7, like I know you're using we haven't got to this yet, but you're using your miners to heat your water heater, heat your pool. Like, you're experimenting, you're trying things out. You don't need to heat your pool between 1 and 7. Like, it's still hot from all the heat of the day. So it's like a win-win.
Right. And that's kind of the eventual idea is like, and in my case, I have a small kids pool that I just set up as a test bed for dumping heat into. This is kind of a proof of concept system. And I have an immersion tank that is heating this pool. But I'm trying to develop this system to be applicable to other people's pools. And theoretically, if you have a big pool, you could just heat it all day except for 1 to 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very easy in the case of a pool, like the temperature of a giant of a big pool doesn't change quickly. So if you just turn off the heat for an hour, it doesn't really even change, or even 6 hours, right?
Yeah, it's mathematical. If you're doing 1,000 gallons with this much energy, it should be X amount of energy to do, 20,000 gallons or 50,000.
Right. So if you combine mining for heat, dumping the heat into a pool around this energy curtailment with the power company, it changes the equation significantly and it can make it much cheaper to the miner. Now it's interesting to hear that your power company doesn't offer anything like that, and I think it just depends on the different jurisdictions. But I think as this grows out further, the power companies that aren't doing that yet are going to realize that they can, and it's going to help them because they want more demand during the low periods of demand, and every jurisdiction has got to have lows and high demand time periods.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have to. Like, there's got to be something where you're at where there's more power draw. Maybe it's at night, maybe it's a different time of day. They're just not really set up to like get people to work around that yet.
I honestly think the problem was just with the communication. Like, maybe I just need to go to the office and do face to face. I think
Right.
the email confused whatever customer service rep I was talking to. I
Yeah.
think there's like, I would assume, as far as their business model is concerned, there is some option where they're trying to optimize reliability and flexibility in their grid, because it doesn't make sense not to, honestly.
Right. And I've talked to several other home miners that are doing something very similar. So I know it's not just like Las Vegas that has something like this. But I know like also Riot Blockchain, which is a big miner, they're doing the same thing, and they're in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And they're working directly with the power company to do dynamic power curtailment around their high demand periods. So they can power down instantly and give all that power back to the grid.
Yeah. I'm talking with Sean Connell next week, and he's with Lancium, And like that's like pretty much exclusively how they operate. It's a wind farm or whatever. It's renewable, and they will give into the grid when the grid needs it. They will buy from the grid when the grid needs them to buy. And really, their sole purpose is to provide this flexibility for the grid. And then they use Bitcoin mining to make them profitable at all hours of the day. Buying, selling, they're making money. So, I mean,
Nice.
you know what I'm saying? It's just it's math. It's common sense at this point. And
I know exactly what you're saying, and that's part of it that I didn't mention in my scenario. So I have solar power and with batteries. So during the peak period between 1 to 7 p.m., I actually sell power back to the grid so my batteries discharge. I'm sorry, the solar goes into the grid, and then the batteries power my house between 1 and 7 p.m. And as an added benefit to me, I get to sell that power back to the grid at a higher rate of 28 cents per kilowatt hour. So I'm actually, so I'm selling power back to the grid at 28 cents a kilowatt hour for 6 hours a day. And then I'm consuming around the rest of the period at 6 cents a kilowatt hour. So what ends up happening is overall that lowers my total cost to about 3 cents a kilowatt hour when all is said and done.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to do simple math here. 28 cents times 6, that's 168. And then so that leaves 18 times, what are you paying? 6 cents?
Yeah.
100. So 128 minus 108 is a 20. So roughly you're just 20% profiting off of the grid, if that makes sense. You sell back for 6 hours at 28 cents. Then you buy for 18 hours at 6 cents. That's net negative.
Yeah, but it's not quite that simple because I can only give back solar. So it's not like my batteries will just discharge their entire capacity into the grid. Because of the regulations of the grid, you can only dump solar into the grid. I can't just discharge battery into the grid.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
that was really stupid on my part. I didn't even think about amount. I just did
and then
rate.
And then on top of that, what I end up doing is shifting my own energy demand around the time of use period. So even prior to having batteries, I would like set my air conditioner set point lower before the 1 p.m. period. So it would use a lot of electricity to cool the house down a little more. And then I would set the set point higher. So then it would just kind of float, and then it wouldn't use as much AC during the 1 to 7 p.m. period.
And you have so is everything automated in your house? Like your AC is, you don't have to be there to set this. You have a program runs, and it says, hey, between 10 and 12:58, ramp this house down to 70 degrees, and then cut off. And then from 70, like from 1 to 6, it will slowly ramp up from the ambient temperature outside. It will ramp back up, and then at 6:01.
Yeah, 7:01 p.m. Then I turn it back down again. Yeah, that's the general concept. And yes, everything is automated. Everything in my house is automated, man. Are you still there? I think I might have lost you.
Yeah, I just had a pop up on my screen. It says internet connection unstable.
Okay.
So can the average person do this? Like, are you like a trained engineer who understands all this stuff, or did you just teach yourself quickly?
So I'm a network engineer, and I have computer information systems and a little bit of computer engineering background. Mm-hmm. But in terms of the home automation stuff, I taught myself everything. But in terms of just getting a thermostat that you can program, I mean, anybody can do that. And in fact, I know a lot of jurisdictions actually will have like a special tie-in to thermostats so they can actually do this for you. Because it's actually I saw this in Colorado when I lived there, and here, where it's like, that's another way that the power companies can actually dynamically scale down power is by reaching out to people's thermostats, turning down their AC.
So they're not setting it at 40 cents an hour to try to screw you. They're really setting it at 40 cents an hour because they don't want you to use it at all. So it's like, hey, this is the price signal. Don't use it. Essentially, is that how the model works?
Yeah, the whole point is to level out the demand curve. So they don't want people they want people to use less energy when the demand is at its peak.
Okay.
So there's a couple different models. There's one that's like, here you can do whatever you want, but here's the price structures. Then there's another one that is a little bit simpler, that is basically like, we will control your thermostat for you. And what will happen is your AC will get a little colder in the morning, and then it'll get a little hotter in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So that's the simpler model if you don't want to even like try to mess with anything, but then you have less control over things. But it works, and you can save yourself money, and it also stabilizes the grid.
Have you used your miners to heat your water heater, like for your showers and tub and whatnot?
No, I haven't done that with my water heater at this point. I've only done a pool so far.
it's like it's almost like saying like I haven't done 2+2, but I've done trigonometry. It sounds it sounds much more complicated to heat a pool than a water heater. I was just curious because like that's something that really interests me. Like if I could just mine Bitcoin and then my water is hot 24/7, sounds win-win.
It does sound like win-win, and it's a great idea. The downside to it is this: the amount of water in a water heater is pretty small relative to a pool. So if you think about like the use case using your water heater, you're taking like one shower a day, and you might run the dishwasher. So the amount of heat that is consumed by you as a user of the water heater is, for one thing, it's pretty small, and it's also highly variable.
Mm-hmm.
So what you really want with a miner is a destination of heat that is pretty stable. So a pool is a giant heat storage location. Like if you think about 20,000 gallons in a pool versus 40 gallons in a water heater, 40 gallons heats up very quickly. So you're gonna heat it up quickly, and now you just need to turn it off. But really, you want to run the miner as much as you can all the time to get the most use out of it. But if you're only using it for 2 hours a day, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. So if you were doing a water heater, it would have to be like a S9, which you can give it like $200. So then, I mean, you're not really mining that much Bitcoin, probably like 0.008 a year, like not.
Yes, but even a single S9, um, you're gonna heat up the water heater, and you only need to run it for 2, 3, 4 hours a day. So ideally, what the system you'd have is a water heater, and then you also can heat your house, and you can heat your pool all with one system, and it just changes the heat destination based on the needs of the house using automation.
Okay, so this is pretty ingenious. Like if I think about it, you could have one miner in your garage. You could not only route it to your water heater, you could route it to a hot tub, you could route it to a pool, you could have a second one specifically designated to the pool, and then you could have, the heat running to your house. And you could have these miners just running specifically for multiple functions, fully automated, pretty much at all times. And you're taking your energy cost, and you're not just burning energy, you're taking energy to make a profit, mining Bitcoin, maybe just sell enough to pay your bills, keep the rest, and get all the function out of the rest of it. Does that sound accurate?
That's exactly what I'm going for, man. So you can take care of all the heating needs of the house. I mean, you can even do like in-floor heating. You can do hot tubs, pools, water heaters. There's people doing greenhouses. I mean, there's industrial uses for it. You can heat there's so many applications of needs for heat. And if you're already spending the energy to heat anyway, and now you just put in a different system that also makes Bitcoin, you're double spending the energy you're already spending, and you're getting Bitcoin too.
Yeah, like my mind is blown right now. That's it. That's the game. That's
the goal.
that's what everybody needs to be doing. All right, so I guess let me transition back to some of the fundamentals of Bitcoin. Like a question, if I was asking somebody and people talk about the security of the Bitcoin network, is SHA-256 the encryption protocol what makes it secure, or is the hash power contributed from all the miners what makes it secure, or is it a combination of both?
Okay, so hashing is what a miner does. SHA-256 is the secure hashing algorithm, 256-bit. So SHA-256 is the hashing algorithm that is used. So hashing is kind of important to understand with mining, I think. So at a basic level, hashing is taking a string of characters and turning it into a different string of characters that is not the same string. So it obfuscates the original value. So let's say you have a string of 1, 2, 3, and then you have a basic hashing function of adding 1 to each digit to change it. So you have an input of 1, 2, 3. You apply your hashing algorithm of +1. Now it becomes 2, 3, 4. Mm-hmm. That's the basics of how hashing works. And that's what, and hashing has a lot of applications. That's what happens when you type a password into a browser or your computer. It goes through a hashing algorithm, and then it's stored on, say, a web server. So the hashed output, which is now not legible, doesn't look like your password, is now stored in a database on a web server. And the purpose of that is to secure it from somebody just looking at it and being like, oh, Dylan's password was 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. So obviously in my example of the basic hashing algorithm, that's too simple. Anybody could just guess 2, 3, 4. But SHA-256 is one of the latest and greatest hashing algorithms, and it's much more complex than just adding 1 to each digit. One of the important factors of hashing is that it takes an input and then outputs the same length of characters. So you can take 1, 2, 3, or you can take the entire blockchain and throw it into that SHA-256 algorithm, and it spits out a string of the same length, which is 250 or 100. Well, it can vary, but it's 256 to 1,024 bits in length, which is why when you look at the transactions in the Bitcoin on the blockchain, you see a character string of 64 characters. So I know this is getting a little bit deep, but trying to bring it back around here. So the important thing of hashing is that it takes a character string and outputs something of a fixed length. So when you download software, for example, you can actually take the hash of that to verify that the entire software is what it says it was.
Okay.
So it runs it through an algorithm, and it's going to output the same exact hash for one given input.
Okay, so let me see if I get this straight. Whew. All right. So miners perform hashing. They're not like actually mining, they're hashing. So hashers, they work to solve the God, they work to win this lottery, which is the block reward. And in doing so, they can prevent a 51% attack. But SHA-256, the encryption algorithm, is what protects your wallet and my wallet. Like if I have my wallet with my 24-word seed phrase, that's actually protected by the SHA-256 and is not protected by the miner per se. Does that sound like a fair?
Not exactly. It's more like the miners are using the SHA-256 algorithm to protect the blockchain and therefore the transactions.
Okay.
So part of the puzzle that the miner is solving is it's taking the hash of the previous block, which verifies that the integrity of the previous block is legitimate.
Which verifies every block preceding it.
Yes, and that's why it becomes a blockchain, because you take the hashed output of the previous block, and then the miners then take the previous hash plus what's called a nonce, which is just a number that can be very small to very large, and they're basically just guessing that number until they're basically guessing the password until they get the hashed output that is already known.
Okay. All right. So block reward is achieved. There's a known output. Let's just call it 18. The miner sees 18. They're like, hey, I have to solve for 18. I have to reverse solve for 18. So then they go and they just essentially brute force attack some random algorithm until 18 pops out the other end, and bam, they get the block reward. And it could be 10 minutes, it could be 2 seconds, but essentially on average, it's always 10 minutes until the next block.
Yeah, they're not reverse engineering that, and that's actually really important in hashing. A hash algorithm only goes one way. So you can put in 27 and maybe the output's 18, but there's no way to take 18 and algorithmically get 27 from the input. So they have to just guess the input until they get 18 as an output.
Okay. Okay, and then that's why it's so hard to solo mine, because maybe the 256 and SHA-256 is 256 digits of zeros and ones that they must. I really know nothing. So is that on the right track?
Sorry, I didn't really follow that last question.
So is like if a miner has to let's say I want to win this block reward, I have to correct guess 256 digits of 01101100001, like 256 times. I guess that would be called bips, maybe. Is that how it works?
Is way harder than that. It's not like, I mean, guessing 0 or 1 times 256, that's within reason. It's like it's way harder. So it's like guessing 0 to like 100 billion quadrillion or something like that. It's like guessing, it's guessing that number. And that's why the proof of work comes into play, because you need 1 million of these really advanced miners to guess as fast as they can. And it takes on average 10 minutes. And then to keep the block time the same, the difficulty adjusts. So the guessing gets harder or easier based on the number of miners that are guessing.
Yeah, that's something. So the difficulty adjustment, that's something I hear people talk about, and they're like, this is one of the greatest innovations ever. So I have this question, and let's just say, all right, say right now, I don't know what the current hash rate of the Bitcoin network is, but blah, 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 gigawatt hashes, massive number, so many computers. Say everybody turned off besides one laptop, and that laptop's just sitting there trying to guess it. And it would take them a year. Does the difficulty adjust down after time, or does it adjust down after block?
It adjusts every 2016 blocks, which is approximately every 2 weeks.
Okay, so if everybody shut off besides one computer, that one computer would be fighting an impossible battle until they could mine X amount of blocks to get the difficulty to adjust to that one computer.
Yes, and that is a potential problem of a huge segment of the miners shutting down.
Yeah, but if enough people mine, like, one laptop versus the whole network is a ridiculous thought, experiment. But let's say China shuts off, well, someone's still going to win with America and Uzbekistan and whatever still mining. It might take a little longer for a few of the blocks, but then time passes, difficulty adjusts downwards, and then business as usual.
Well, it's an interesting thought experiment, but it's an actual vector of attack that's been written about. Like,
Okay.
if for example, China controlled 80% of the mining, and then sometime in the future they decided to launch an attack against the Bitcoin blockchain, they could shut down the entire thing theoretically, and then the 20% remaining, it would take them so long to mine the next block. It could potentially take like a year or 2 years to mine one block. Now you've essentially stopped the blockchain from functioning.
Yeah.
So that is a legitimate attack vector. And that's why decentralization of mining is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's pretty much exactly what you're working on. And then also I'll kind of counterpoint that argument by saying, like, okay, you can ban it in China, but China can't ban it in India. Because especially, like, if you ban something in China, the Indians who hate the Chinese will probably just do the opposite out of tradition, So you ban it in China, it's probably going to be like pro Bitcoin India. And then, okay, you can't ban it in Africa from China. So you have to get the whole world on one page, or 80% of the world on one page, which is tough.
Right. But I mean, that's that specific type of attack. There's also 51% attacks, which is if you control 51% of the miners, you can actually have them mine a different block, and then you can fork the blockchain in a different direction, and then falsify transactions or make transactions appear differently the way you would want.
That would be essentially double spending. When you hear someone double spending, you're getting a 51%, you're spending Bitcoin here, and then you're verifying like your own version of the blockchain where you verify the same Bitcoin spent somewhere else. And then that makes everything invalid.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah, double spending definitely goes along with 51% attacks.
Okay. Yeah, this is it's so much to like wrap your head around. Like,
it is.
I read a book called Digital Gold that kind of explained it, but like I'm very not computer savvy. Like I'm pretty much computer illiterate at the point where like I can operate Bitcoin. I can send, Stephen Chow some sats to transcribe this after we're done talking, and I can buy it and send it to cold storage. But that's as far as my literacy goes. And I know there's much more to it. But I Byzantine generals problem. Like everybody talks about this. They say that's Satoshi's innovation. Satoshi was the one to solve this. What is it, and what is the problem?
Yeah, so the Byzantine generals problem is kind of like a metaphor. So you have one city sitting in the middle, and there's two armies trying to attack it. There's two armies on two separate sides of the city, and there's two generals leading the armies. Now, part of the metaphor is that in order to successfully overcome the city and take over the city, the two generals have to attack the city at the same time. Otherwise, the defenses of the city are going to be strong enough that they can block out one attacker at a time. So the idea is that the two generals have to communicate when exactly they're going to attack the city. And in order to communicate, they actually have to send a messenger through the city. Now the problem becomes, one general can say, well, let's attack Tuesday at noon. And the messenger sends it over. And the other one says, oh, I can't do Tuesday at noon. Let's do Wednesday at 3 p.m. Sends it back. The problem is that they don't know that the messenger is going to make it, or if he's going to get compromised, or if the message is going to be changed in some way. So there's no way to trustlessly verify that the information between the two generals is successfully coming together, and so that they can do a successful attack.
Mm-hmm.
The way that correlates to Bitcoin is kind of how what I was trying to explain with the SHA-256, and how mining works to get consensus of a bunch of different nodes so that they can trustlessly verify the message. And that's where hashing comes into play. You are taking the previous message and hashing it to get a digital signature of the previous block, and then combining that with the next hash. And combining these things, we can verify through encryption and hashing trustlessly without direct communication through the messenger through the city.
Okay. And
if that makes any sense.
Let me see if I can comprehend this. So the Bitcoin version 0.1, whatever the very original version was one that's such that if someone solved the hash function and distributed through this Byzantine city, that even if someone wanted to change the message getting to, from General A to General B, that they would have no success. Like, say the message said Tuesday noon, and it goes through the city and some bad actor said Tuesday at 2. By the time it got to General B, the message they see is just going to say Tuesday at noon. Like, it doesn't matter what the bad actor tried to input. Is that kind of how it works? Like, I don't know.
Well, the idea is that the hashing is actually providing the data integrity. So once it gets to the second general, he can look at the hash and compare it to the expected hash and see that it matches. So that way he knows that it wasn't changed in flight. And that's what hashing and data integrity does.
Okay, so it's almost as if General A wrote it in stone with a chisel. So as it went through this city, if someone wanted to change it, they're having to write on stone on top of something else that's written on stone. So if it gets to General B, he's like, well, obviously this said Tuesday at noon and somebody tried to change it, but I can see what the original message was because it was engraved in this, in this perfectly fortified object. Kind of?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, writing in stone, maybe it takes like 2 whole days to write the message in stone. And now if in the city, they could change the message, but they'd have to like chop the stone in half or like grind it down and then rewrite it again. Maybe it takes like 2 days to do that. Mm-hmm. So that they can theoretically alter the message, but it takes so long that the other guy's going to know, well, the message didn't even come in time. Like, we can see that the message was attempted to be altered. And so, yeah, the stone metaphor kind of works in that way. I mean, that works.
What is, like, as far as Bitcoin mining goes and Bitcoin security of the network, what is like your biggest concern? Is it a lack of decentralization? Companies like Riot and Marathon taking over so much percentage of the hash that eventually it's a two-party system like Republican and Democrat? Or I don't know. I don't know anything about mining, but that's what I see in my simple brain.
Yeah, it's something similar, something along those lines. I think it's important to have as much decentralization as possible. So big mines are somewhat decentralized, meaning they might have mines in multiple different continents with multiple different energy jurisdictions, which is a good thing. So I mean, if it's on a separate continent, that's different political leaders that are controlling that, and different energy jurisdiction means that if there's a catastrophe in one country that shuts down the power grid, another country still has power.
Hmm.
So that is somewhat decentralized, but still, let's say there's only three big miners in the world, and it's 10 years in the future, and now Bitcoin has become the standard in the world. Let's just play a what if here.
Hmm.
Now think of how much people are going to want to take over the Bitcoin blockchain. It's going to be hugely incentivized for people to try to take money out of the Bitcoin blockchain. So there's going to be, I mean, we might have world leaders trying to politically throw their power around and say, okay, I'm going to shut down. If you don't shut down Bitcoin miner A, then we're going to shut your power down or blow you up. They can put pressure on a big organization.
Yeah, and especially if, like, say there's three organizations, then
Yeah,
there's three CEOs. It's not that hard to leverage two of them, you know?
exactly. But if Bitcoin mining is more decentralized in the hands of, say, of regular people, and maybe they're even more integrated into heaters all over the world. So now there's 10 million heaters in houses. How do you coerce that?
Yeah.
You don't coerce that. And I mean, to me, Bitcoin is for the people. And also, owning a Bitcoin miner and a node is like voting within the system. I mean, the nodes actually vote to accept new code and how to run the blockchain.
So
So we need that to be democratized as well.
I have a question about that. So I have a node. I got like a Raspberry Pi, Raspberry Pi, however you pronounce it. And I run like a Umbrel node, which I guess is both a core node and a Lightning node.
Okay.
Do
Uh-huh.
I have to log into that to vote if there is ever such vote, or if I plug it in and it's running, does it just consistently vote on stay as is? You know, I don't know how to work the thing. I just have it. It just sits there and it just burns up internet and costs me a lot of money a month.
No, it's not using much power or internet. But yeah, so when I say voting, what I mean is, so a node can decide whether or not to upgrade to the next version of Bitcoin Core. So an Umbrel may be upgrading automatically. I don't know. I set up Umbrel, but I didn't look into it too much. But basically, a node runner can decide I'm going to go to the next version of Bitcoin Core, or I'm going to accept. So that's what I mean by voting is you have the
Mhm.
option to go to the next version of Bitcoin in the future.
Okay, so long as you don't go to the next version, you're essentially voting on the last version every second.
Yeah, you can kind of look at it that way. Yeah.
Okay, so there's not going to be a pop-up that I have to like log in a computer into my Raspberry. I guess a Raspberry is a computer, but I don't have to like log a monitor into it and then go click on a vote. It's just as long as I don't go in there and purposefully decide to vote on something else, it votes on the present.
I guess you can look at it like that, but like I said, I don't know how Umbrel implements Bitcoin Core. It might auto upgrade. Um, so I'm not sure specifically about Umbrel.
Okay, so what is like I'm not trying to get you to go out on a limb here, but like what is the best? Like if if maybe Umbrel isn't the best, maybe I'm relying on a corporate executive to decide the policy for me. If I want my node to run Bitcoin as is forever, what do I do? Do I download Bitcoin Core? Can my Raspberry Pi do that?
So yeah, Bitcoin Core is a good one. I'm not sure if it can run. I think I'm pretty sure you could set it up on a Raspberry Pi. I mean, a Raspberry Pi can run a basic Linux operating system, and you can plug in a 1 or 2 terabyte SSD into that Pi, and so it could run Core. I'm not saying Umbrel is necessarily a bad option, and auto updating is not necessarily a bad thing either. So there are several like pre-built node operating systems. There's Umbrel, there's my node, there's Ronin Dojo. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other on any of those. Mm-hmm. They're all running Core though, so you're running a node, which is a good thing in general for the overall Bitcoin blockchain. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So essentially right now I'm operating in a trust. Like I'm running a node, which is, verify, don't trust, but I'm running my node in a manner which is trust, don't verify. Cause I'm just essentially letting whoever's in charge of Umbrel decide for me. Like if this was the fork wars, they could say, hey, we're going big blocks. And as far as I know, I have no say so long as I run their software.
No, not necessarily. What I'm saying is I don't know if Umbrel specifically just auto upgrades Bitcoin Core. I just don't know personally. It might be something that it prompts you. Do you want to upgrade or not? I don't know. Or it might be like a checkbox that you can say auto upgrade for future. I just don't know. So I wouldn't go as far to say it's like trustless or trustful, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Going with Umbrel. I mean, it's still running Bitcoin Core. I don't think they're just in control of it completely or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm sorry if I put words in your mouth. I'm just honestly so clueless with how that thing works. It just kind of takes up room in my house. I'm like, you know what? I'm helping, fighting for the cause. But I guess what would be useful knowledge for people at home if they wanted to mine, to help prevent against a situation where maybe Riot Marathon becomes so centralized that we're actually worried about this. So we need people using miners, and then they could profit from heating pools and water heaters, etc. Double spend the energy. How does the profitability of that look? Like, is an S9 essentially just a space heater at this point? Do you need a S19? Could you run through that kind of like head math on how that works?
Yeah, so the profitability of mining goes up and down dramatically along with the price and difficulty. So 2020, 2021 was a huge uprun in profitability of mining, and that's why we saw the prices of miners go 4, 5, 6x over that 2-year period, because mining was very profitable. Now we're in a bear market, or whatever you want to call it. The price is much lower and the difficulty is at all-time highs. So the profitability right at this moment, the equation of that does not look great to just get straight into mining. And that is why I'm trying to implement other tactics to shift the needle of profitability through reusing the heat, and also trying to work with the energy jurisdictions to get the lower priced power. So by doing a couple of these things, I feel like we can move the profitability equation more in the favor of home miners, and therefore improve the likelihood of more people mining at home or in small operations.
Yeah, it's almost like in my head, I feel like if you're mining at home, you need to, either decide up front that you're going to pay the energy cost out of pocket. Like, I'm buying this machine, I'm paying for my energy out of pocket. I'm going to eat shit for 4 years. Or you need to sell just enough to pay the energy cost. But you don't need to sell, each month as like a fiat gain, because I don't think the market is set up in such a structure that home mining is, your end all be all. I'm getting out of going to work on Wednesday because I'm mining at home. I don't know. Do you think that's a fair statement?
Yeah, so I mean, there's certainly people that have made a large enough scale of a mining operation that they are potentially making enough to live on. But most people that are mining at home, part of the reason they're doing it is to get non-KYC Bitcoin. So instead of buying Bitcoin through an exchange and having to have their identity tied to that purchase, you can mine Bitcoin anonymously or semi-anonymously and get what's called non-KYC Bitcoin. So that's a big benefit as well to many home miners.
That's so true. I didn't even think about that. Like, what
And
is the
also,
monetary value of that?
yeah, and also you can think of it as just dollar cost averaging your fiat into Bitcoin. So instead of just buying $200 worth of Bitcoin a month, you run an S19, you pay $200 worth of electricity, you get $200 worth of Bitcoin or 400 or 100.
Mm-hmm.
But you know where the price of Bitcoin is going eventually anyway. So
Yeah. If
you
you're
have to
buying a
kind of look
minor,
at it. You kind of got to look at long term as well.
yeah, like you don't buy a miner thinking Bitcoin stays 20,000. Like there's
Exactly.
no logical sense in that. You buy it thinking Bitcoin's going to 100. So obviously your like HODL ratio is probably going to be, at a minimum 80% if I had to guess. So that's a very fair point. So I've always kind of done it in the sense that I don't DCA. I've never been a big DCA. I'm more of a more of a take a loan out, buy a huge lump sum spot, and then DCA back the loan that I'm now indebted to, because I feel like, okay, if it's a 6-year loan and I buy it all today, is Bitcoin going to be worth more in 6 years? And my conviction says it's yes. So do I need it to be 3% higher to beat the interest rate on the loan? I'll take that bet. I'll take that bet every day of the week. Might be foolish, but I'd do it 100 times over.
I think that's a fair bet that you're going to get way better than 3%.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, the question is how much do you want to over leverage yourself? I mean, if it's something that you can easily afford, then yeah, by all means. So I mean, I follow your logic, and that is like you're betting that the price is going to go up in the future, and you want to invest as much as you can now instead of waiting and then investing as you go.
Mm-hmm. And then so I see mining as a very similar play, but maybe a safer play, maybe a smarter play, which is really making me wanting to get into it because I had to buy an S19. I guess it's $5,000. I mean, they make multiple versions of an S19. So I'm not very familiar with the What's miners, so that's why I never mention them. S19s, I just know they come in like a 96, a 104, a 110, something like that, just depending on chip grade. So I get that. It's going to cost me $200 a month, roughly, maybe 250, and I can pay that. But I'll also be receiving Bitcoin. So if things get bad, I can sell. I can sell to pay my energy. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I'm out of work, and I don't go. I don't earn my normal fiat that I would use to pay the bill. Well, now I have this machine just constantly rolling in, almost like a rent house. It's like my Bitcoin rent house that I can either invest back into the property, aka hold, or I can sell to pay off the loan. I don't know. Is that how you view it? How do you view your Bitcoin mining and your life and your sovereign?
Yeah, so there's a lot there, but I the way I view it is that for one thing, I'm helping to further decentralize Bitcoin. And another part of it is just the engineer in me. I mean, I call myself tech engineer because that's what my passions are, technology and engineering. So these projects that I'm building of these Bitcoin miner heaters are just DIY projects that were very interesting to me. I love building things. I love engineering things. And I saw the problem. I saw this problem that not many people were working on, and I found it interesting. So that's part of it. The other part is stacking more sats KYC free. That's another reason to do it. For the last 2 years, I kind of knew that the prices of miners were high. So I got first interested in Bitcoin mining in 2017 when it was a big bull run up. And I didn't get a miner at that time because they were really hard to get. I actually tried to buy one and it never came. And then the price crashed. And then I was kind of glad I didn't, because then I saw the price of miners crash, the price of Bitcoin crash. And I realized that there is a good and a bad time to buy miners. And so right now, the miners prices are crashing hard. I mean, they've gone from all the way from $12,000 for an S19, 3-4 months ago, all the way down to 5,000 or 6,000 right now. And I think they're going to go further.
I do too.
So honestly, in the last 2 years, I've just been kind of waiting it out for more of a bear market to get more into mining. So I'm still waiting a little bit to get some more miners. And part of my goals are to also help other people with their mining for heat journey, and to help people integrate miners into their house or their heating solution, and build some automation and a system that is reproducible and modular, so that more people can just take the system and apply it to their situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's actually two things I want to touch on there. First, you talked about non-KYC. And in my head, I'm thinking, okay, so everybody can go to Cash App, everybody can go to Strike, everybody can go to Coinbase, they can buy Bitcoin, and it's roughly going to be the same because everybody plays the arbitrage game. So let's call it 20,500 roughly. If I went to BISC, which I'm pretty sure is a non-KYC peer-to-peer exchange. Have you ever bought from like a platform like that? Do you know what the monetary value of non-KYC Bitcoin is? Like, what is the premium? Are you aware?
I don't really. I've never used BISC. I haven't really used the peer-to-peer systems like that. So I don't know what the premium is offhand.
Yeah, I don't either. I know there will be one. Like, there has to be one because, you're paying for something extra. But okay, so neither of us know the monetary value of the non-KYC premium, but you're getting that with mining. You're getting that, and you need to factor that in when you look at a Bitcoin mining calculator, and it shows like, well, I don't know, maybe you pull up Brains and it says 20,500. Well, really, you need to factor in maybe it's 22. Like, what's it worth on BISC where it's non-KYC? But I guess oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I looked into it like a year or two ago, one of the peer-to-peer services, and I just couldn't get my head around kind of the well, first of all, I didn't see many like options in my area. Whatever site I was looking at, it was hard to use. It seemed kind of like I had to trust random people on the internet type of a thing. But I do remember seeing somewhere in the realm of like 5 to 10% premium, if I'm not mistaken. So it's somewhere around there.
That's what I would probably consider fair. I do remember like a year and a half ago or so, people were talking about the price of Bitcoin in Africa, and it was substantially more than it was here. And that's because they were all doing whatever city it was in the continent, whatever country it was in the continent. It must have been illegal there. So the peer-to-peer market was booming. But second thing I thought of while you were speaking earlier was the how prices always converge. This is something I've heard Sean Connell say in preparation for talking to him. And he was talking about how when he was orange pilled, let's call it 2017, Bitcoin was 10 grand, 12 grand, but the price to mine was 2. So he said, I'm going to hold off because in commodities, prices always converge. Bitcoin is essentially a downstream commodity of energy. Energy is a commodity downstream of, oil or natural gas. So today, Bitcoin's 20,000. I think is it at the cost? Like, is break even right now for most people? Is the average break even where we are?
Yeah, there's different ways of calculating that. I haven't looked at the average cost of a Bitcoin to mine it recently, but yeah, I think you're pretty close. It's somewhere around that $20,000 range. So yeah, I think it is around there, but
So if miners drop in price from here, they're only dropping to catch up with what the market actually perceives. They're not dropping based on the price today. They're dropping based off of being overvalued on the price of yesterday. And so maybe it continues for a couple months, but we're in my head, we must be very close to the bottom of these miner prices. Does that fit what you've seen in the past?
that's a good question. I didn't really follow the price bottoming in like 2018 of miners very closely, but you could be right that we're close to a bottoming of miner prices, and I feel like it's coming fast. I mean, prices. I kind of follow the Kaboom Racks Telegram channel as well, like you do, and you see how much it's fallen just in the last month. And I mean, if you look at the hash price graph, I mean, there was one guy saying that he thinks that an S19 Pro should be around $1,800 based on the hash price
Yeah, so
and
that's more
average electricity cost. So I mean, it's a really dichotomous situation right now where you have the highest ever difficulty and a really low price that we haven't seen in a while. So it's the miners kind of take the brunt of that crash because it's got to come down to make those kind of match up.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, if I was a big boy in the space, if I was like, moving the market, I would keep everything powered on full power to shake out my competitors. Like I feel like I've heard Adam Back say, you want to get into mining? Let's say you get $1 million loan, you buy $500,000 worth of equipment, you sit on $500,000 to pay for your energy. So you took out the loan and you're set essentially regardless of what happens, because you're going to use the rest of your loan to pay for your loan until halfway through the loan life. So I feel like if I was a big dog, that's the play I'd be doing. I'd be shaking out my competitors, making them go bankrupt, and then you get a fire sale. So I guess that's what happened last cycle. There was a fire sale where you were getting like S9s for like 10, 15, 20, $50. I know it wasn't painful to buy them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost happening right now. It's kind of a fire sale going on right now, but I think the prices are going to drop even more.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Tech, all the stuff you're doing on Twitter with this, double spending energy. I feel like that's the best way to put it. I think that's how you actually put it yourself. Do you do this? Do you have a like a business you operate where you go place to place, house to house, business to business, and then consult or help them set up?
No, at this point, I'm still trying to develop out more of a refined system. I think you may have seen some of my latest things with the pool heater where I'm working to actually automate the scaling up and scaling down of the power of the miner itself based on external factors like the temperature of the pool. So automation is really a really big deal to me, and there's a lot of important reasons why. I mean, safety is one thing. You don't want to have a miner running an immersion tank that then overheats and then either causes damage to the miners or busts your tank, or there's a lot of things that automation can help fix. You can have an automation that says if the temperature of the oil gets too high, shut down. But more importantly, we want to just be able to set a temperature of your pool theoretically, and then the miner, it automatically keeps it that way. Nobody wants something that they have to do manually every twice a day, turn something on or off. So I'm really trying to like refine what I've built and make sure it's like reproducible and modular. But then maybe eventually, if it comes to it, then I could do that. I've definitely had a lot of people reach out to me asking for like they want a pool heater, they want a water heater. I mean, there's definitely interest there. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, I think you have a special skill, a skill that I would call 98% of the population does not have. And I could see, like, I know me personally, I would reach out to someone like you and say, hey, man, I want one of these Bitcoin miner pool heaters. Can you send me a setup? Because I'm far too ignorant on how to do it myself. I would rather just have someone do it right. I pay them, for their time and energy, and then I know everything works. Well, I think that's something to think about, buddy. I think you need to do it. It would work.
No, it's definitely something I'm working towards, and I think there's a lot of people like you that have a lot of interest in the ethos of Bitcoin and helping to decentralize Bitcoin, and they like the no KYC, and they just think it'd be awesome to be swimming in sats because you have a Bitcoin pool heater.
Swimming, dude, swimming in sats is the name of the business, bro.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there like I've had several already contact me that are like, yeah, come do this at my pool. So it's definitely something I'm working towards. As fast as I can, to be honest. Just not enough time in the day to do all the things I want to do.
I hear you. Well, Tech, if you want to give them a handoff, I really appreciate you. I appreciate the knowledge you brought to this conversation. You educated the hell out of me. It was wonderful, man. And so just let people know where they can find you, where they can see the work you're doing, and then let them know how they can buy some swimming in sats technology.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. It's been a pleasure. I tried to explain things best I could, where I could. You can find me on Twitter at TechEngineer21. I am also on YouTube, Tech Engineer, but Twitter is probably the best place to find me. And if you are mining or interested in mining and want to get in on the conversation, come on and join.
Well, that was the Books and Bitcoin podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please leave a review on whatever podcast platform you're using. Thank you.